I think sometimes people have this expectation that you're always the Undertaker.
You're always on. You're always on.
You're supposed to be the Undertaker.
Yeah.
Ric Flair has to be Ric Flair.
Yeah.
And
well, he is. But.
yes.
Don't you want to change?
Nope. I'm
not even.
So, okay, I can tell you why I don't have shoes on today. So this is a problem, okay? I wore flip-flops like one time. Like Tim Kennedy was on the show or something.
Okay,
and I wear flip-flops and like he starts busting my balls. Tim's busting my balls, all this stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Well, then it became like a thing online, like the comments and everything about my flip-flops.
Yep.
A lot of people have come out and said that they are in support of me wearing flip-flops, okay?
Yep.
A lot more people have come out and said that maybe you shouldn't wear the flip-flops.
I don't see those comments. I only read the positive comments, okay? I don't read the negative ones. I don't hone in on the negative ones. So the reason I don't have shoes on today was I came straight from Colorado where I had a pair of tennis shoes with me. I go out to go for a run because I'm trying to get myself back in shape. And literally 2 minutes into the run,
A bear stole them.
no, a bear didn't steal my shoes. I ran through like this little, like very wet area, and I didn't realize how wet it was or how deep it was, and it was over my ankles deep.
Yeah.
Then I was
It's
like,
probably called a river.
it wasn't a river. It was just like a wash off from like a creek or something that was like it was in the field. It was out in the field. So I ran through and got my shoes dirty. I was like, screw it, I'll just keep running. I did like 3 miles. I come back and had to run through it again. I thought, okay, I'll clean my shoes up and everything else. They look like garbage right now. They're at the hotel. They look like garbage right now. So that's why I'm not wearing shoes.
He's just looking at your
Okay.
feet the whole time.
That's because he likes them. He's got maybe a little bit of a fetish.
No, I don't have any kind of. I don't. I really don't. And if I did, looking at that, I would cure me of any.
I think you're
fetish
just
that
jealous.
I'm not. No, I'm not jealous. I'm trying to. We're trying to get some subscribers, and then we got to look at your corns.
Bro, this is how you get them right here. This is how you get them right here.
This is what I have to put up with week after week after week.
I see it. I see it.
It's. I mean, a grown man does not wear flip flops.
Jesus did. What you got to say about that? Huh? Yeah, talk bad about Jesus. Come on, I want to hear this. Please inform me. Yeah. And the company is veteran-owned and operated, and they give their money back to help out.
Oh, really?
Female
now,
initiatives.
Then you're going to hit me with Jesus and the vets.
Yeah. So you don't like Jesus
He's
or
just
the
stacking
vets.
the cards against you, my friend. That's what he's doing.
Man, your true colors are coming out. I see that. Yeah. I like the shirt, by the way.
You like that shirt?
I like Andre.
He'd have killed you.
Andre would have killed me. Andre would have loved me.
He would have ate you.
He would have loved me.
No.
Andre would have loved me.
Man, thank you for being on our show today.
Absolutely. I'm super excited to be here.
We're excited to have you. Just try not to pay him much attention. I don't know what he really does here, but other than annoy the out of me. But yeah, he always trying to get me talk about wrestling, and I'm actually excited because I love talking about MMA and fighting, and I love hearing people's mind. When you get around people that have excelled at what they've done. I've always loved to hear the process and hear about their journey.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know who it might be, but you were pretty much untouchable for a long time. Always in the pound for pound argument. I think still it's the fight you had with Henry. I still think that's kind of a controversial.
To this day, still controversial.
Controversial, but I mean, even before that, there was nobody that I mean. Would you went? How many? You went? What? 3, 4?
6 years.
6 years.
6 years as a champion in the UFC in the flyweight division, undefeated. And then I lost. That was a controversial decision you were talking about with Henry Cejudo in California. And the reason why it was controversial is a lot of people don't know this, is that, in mixed martial arts, it's in the UFC, it's by rounds.
Sure.
Right? 10-9 round. 10-9 round. 10-9 point system. It has to be every single round that way. And there was a lot of the athletic commission were talking about, okay, a lot of people would just do a takedown and hold somebody down to steal the round, right?
Sure.
Like they would just forget everything that just happened in the whole round.
Control, just like
Control, exactly. And that fight, they implemented a new rule. It was like the ABC rule, or whatever, that the Athletic State Commission of California passed. And like, if you take somebody down and you don't show any, damage, any progression of trying to pass guard and start a submission game, then the takedown would be nullified. Like they wouldn't address the takedown. And so one of the things that Henry did very well in that fight, and me and him talked about it. He was like, I knew I wasn't a better fighter than you, but I knew that I can prove to the judges that I can control you. Right. And so when he would take me down and he would just hold me and control me, and I'm trying to get up, I'm trying to elevate him, I'm trying to, get back to my feet to try to start back to the striking, he just would hold me. And so when the decision was read that I lost a split decision, even though I outstruck him, everybody was like, you didn't lose that fight. And for me, I'm glad it happened, because it gave me the opportunity to go do bigger and better things.
Right.
And at that time, me and the UFC were at, not the best situation, especially because they've talked about for so long to get rid of the flyweight division.
Right.
And so, but yeah, that was the end of my reign as a champion at the flyweight division in the UFC.
Yeah, you were definitely untouchable, and it was just like, it was almost to the point where like I'd see you, you'd be on a pay-per-view card, and I was like, well,
Ain't fine.
that's a dub. That's a dub right there.
Yeah. Was that a problem though? Like, was that a thing where maybe the UFC even thought, God, if we put this guy at the top of the card, nobody's going to buy the pay-per-view because they know he's going to win, and like it's not even going to be a fight.
Yeah, there was a time when I was ready to fight John Dodson for the second time, and I would, that's one thing I'll have to say with the UFC. Like we try to work together. I remember being in Dana White's office with the Fertitta brothers, and they're like, hey, let me show you the new promo for your next pay-per-view. And it was me getting ready to fight John Dodson. And it was just John Dodson just beating me up the whole entire time, the promo. And I was like, guys, promo looked great, but there's one problem. Why are you showing me getting my ass beat the whole time? And then he goes, well, we have to show to the public that you are beatable, that people can't touch you. Because right now you have this mystic aura that nobody can beat you. Yeah. And if everybody thinks that you're always going to win, they're not going to tune into the pay-per-view.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, all right, well, I understand that, but can
you give me one highlight?
Can you give me one highlight? And they're like, we're just trying to do our best to sell you. And I think that was the hardest thing for the UFC to do, is that they weren't able to sell me to the masses, right? Yeah. Like all the hardcore fans, they loved me, but the hardcore fans are also very tech savvy, where they can, work around and not buy pay-per-view. But they did their best, the best of their ability to sell me, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think it was a hard thing for them, because like you said, Mark was like, DJ's on. That's an instant dub. We ain't buying that, honey. What's going on? We're going to bed early that night. Yeah. I'm going to catch up on my sleep.
Yeah. Because, there was no one ever close. Like, from what I remember, I mean, you...
It's 11 straight. Was it 11 or 12 straight?
11 consecutive straight, yeah. 11 consecutive. Yeah. Which is
title defenses.
Defenses. Like, in today's era, it's
unheard of.
It's unheard of, right? Yeah. I think the person who got the closest potentially was Izzy Adesanya, and then maybe Max Holloway, I feel like, or Alex Volkanovski. Those are the ones that ring a bell in my mind who got close. And that's the thing, when I was coming up in mixed martial arts, it was about just defending the belt as much as possible. You had Anderson Silva, who set that record at 10, and that was kind of like my goal. I was like, okay, can I get 10 consecutive title defenses? That's showing up, being on weight, being consistent. As you know, like when you show up, it's another night on the lights. Anything can happen. 2 inches slipping this way could be, gash, you get cut. But it was 11 consecutive title defenses, and it's something I'm very proud of, because like we just said, in today's era in mixed martial arts, it's kind of unheard of. It's very rare if somebody gets to 6 consecutive title defense, where they're like, oh, I want to go do a double champ. I want to go. You're not motivated by just being consistent. Just keep on winning and defending the belt. Yeah
man, that was an impressive run, though. So what's your you're a wrestler?
Yep.
Was your background?
Yep. My background started in wrestling. Growing up I was raised by my mom. She was deaf, and she was raising 2 children, 2 boys, me and my brother, Salamar. And my mom, she was like, you know, you do whatever you want. She was, your ass is going to work during, you know, the school, during summer vacation. And during the school year, I'm going to give you an option. You can either do sports, and I'll pay for everything, you know, your insurance, gas, and all that stuff, or you can get a job, and you gonna work. And I was like, I will take option 1. I will do sports, and you can pay for everything. And so, you know, I came from a poor background, so whatever money we made or she had was through child support from my dad and my father, my stepbrother. And I did wrestling, football, basketball, track. But wrestling was like my calling. Like wrestling was, you know, being 5'3", I was probably 4'9" at that time, 95 pounds. You know, playing football, you're not the biggest guy on the field. You're the, you know, I was the fastest, but you know, you got to get put in to be able to play.
Sure, right.
And so for me, wrestling was just my calling. Like, you know, we get on the mat. I got the opportunity to actually compete, right? Like I wrestled at 95 pounds. It's like, hey, 95, come up to the mat. It's your opportunity to wrestle.
Right.
Like there was nobody like, oh, well, we're not going to run that play. Wrestling was a thing where you got the opportunity, just like track, you got your opportunity to run your race.
Right.
And so wrestling was like something I just fell in love with, and then went to high school and then did, you know, football, track, and wrestling. And then Friday night will come. I'm on the bench. Coach, put me in. He goes, you ain't gonna play. And I was like,
I heard that a lot too.
Yeah. Like, why the am I here? I was like, I'm not gonna play. And he goes, you gotta wait till you're a senior to get your opportunity to play on the field. I'm like, senior? It's like sophomore. It's like, that's 2 more years. I said, you know what? I'm out. Deuces. And that's when I went to go run cross country. And then I would run cross country in the fall, wrestle in the winter, and then spring would be track. And then that's what I did. My high school career was, my background was starting in wrestling. And then after high school, that's when I kind of traversed into mixed martial arts.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think. So what year was that? That was
2006 is when I got like introduction into mixed martial arts.
So 2000.
How old were you then?
19 years old. And I was in college doing the college thing, because that's, everybody says, oh, if you want to be successful in life, you got to go to college.
Yeah, that's a big crock of crap.
Yeah,
I think.
I agree. And so I was like, you know what? Better go to college. So I was taking shit classes. I was taking human sexuality. You know, I was like, I guess if I can learn, you know, I didn't know I was going to go to college.
There's a lot of guys that took human sexuality.
Yeah, and I was like, you know, I'm going to learn about sex. I want to know about the anatomy of a woman and all that stuff. So took that class.
You took it twice, didn't you?
You took it 3 times, right?
I'm still taking it.
Good on you. So I took this, and I never forget that I was working full time at Journey's shoe store as an assistant manager. Was taking full classes, 3 classes, 15 credits, and I was also training on the side. But what really got me before that time, I was coming home from college, and I saw The Ultimate Fighter, and this was like the first time they had like a show about fighters on television where they would compete to get the opportunity to get a contract into the UFC. And I'll never forget seeing Rashad Evans. Mm-hmm. And he was out there moving, and he was punching a bag up a hill. And I was like, wow, they can defend themselves. It looks like a great workout. And I was like, you know what? I'm sure I can do this. So I went to the gym, and I just started punching the bag. And one of the guys I knew from wrestling in high school saw me. He was like, hey, man, do you want to know how to fight? I was like, sure. Why not? Right. And then that's when I started taking classes Mondays and Thursdays at a gym called Vision Quest, which is named after the great wrestling movie Vision Quest. Mm-hmm. And so I started taking classes while working 40 hours a week at Journey's as assistant manager while going to school, taking full load. And I remember my mom was like, she was supporting me, and she got a call from the counselor. She goes, hey, we need you to come in, talk about Demetrious's grades. They seem to be falling behind in class. So went to the counselor, and she goes, yeah, so when you first started college, you're doing very, very well. Like your grades were good. And then right now, this period of time, it's dropping. Anything change at home or anything like that? I was like, well, I'm working full time. I started training and I'm taking full load of classes. She goes, well, it seems like something's got to go. And I was like, well, I need money to work because my mom has no money. I love training. I don't really care about school. I'm just here because I have to.
That's what I'm supposed to do.
People were telling me that's what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, well, I'm out. I left college. And then that's when I started training full time. And I had my first amateur fight, won that. And then went back to work, an assistant manager. Then I left Journeys to go work at Red Lobster. No, I worked at Red Lobster first. Then I went to Journeys, yeah. And then after Journeys, I went and worked construction. And then the rest was just like one after another. And yeah.
Wow. So who you're training, so obviously with the wrestling base, I think that has to be the most important.
It's the best base. It's the best base. I even to this day, I think wrestling and jiu-jitsu is probably the best base.
Right.
And I would say wrestling is because there's not another sport out there where you're cutting weight at a young age, you're weighing in right before your match, and then you compete, 2 hours after you weigh in. So in mixed martial arts, it's kind of the same thing.
Right.
You weigh in, you get 24 hours to rehydrate, and then you fight. Wrestling is another sport where it's like I'm fighting another man who's my size, and I have my coach who's yelling at me outside of the ring. Jiu-jitsu, they say, it's kind of similar, but jiu-jitsu, you weigh in and then you go compete. So jiu-jitsu is the same, but in jiu-jitsu, in gi jiu-jitsu, you have, the kimono, which is,
right.
You can grab. In mixed martial arts, you're pretty much butt-ass naked,
right.
Along with the wrestling singlet. You pretty much can't grab the material. You have to wrestle them. So I'll always say to this day that wrestling is the best background, and then jiu-jitsu second, and then stand-up and so forth.
Yeah, that's...
Were you a good wrestler in high school, though?
Mm-hmm.
You were...
I was decent. Like, I didn't go to college to wrestle because there was no money in college to wrestle, and I needed money. So I was like, I don't want to go to, and then at the time, this is when college wrestling was being phased out of college programs. Like, obviously, if you go to, like, Oregon or the Midwest, maybe even the East Coast areas, you can have like a good college that have a good wrestling program. But in Washington State, they're just axing it. Like the last one that was even there was a PLU, which was a private school that had a wrestling program, but it was super expensive just to get into the college itself because it was a private school. So for me, wrestling was out of the question. Even though I was super good, I never got an offer to go wrestle in college because it was being phased out, essentially.
Yeah.
I grew up here in Texas, and there was no wrestling in high schools other than a couple of private schools.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Is it in high schools now?
No, it's big now.
Yeah,
it's big
it's
here
big now.
But I don't know if you know this, but Matt was the 5th ranked 145er in South Carolina.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man.
Hey.
He's like, yeah, man. Yeah, they're doing nothing with it, but it's good.
Thanks for recognizing it.
He's modest, but
I mean, it was, and then we had our first match, and realized there was only 4 wrestlers that were in the.
But he was
whole
5th.
division.
But he was 5th.
Oh, that's bad.
Yeah.
Got him.
My wrestling career. The only reason I got a spot on the team was there wasn't enough guys to fill out the.
Hey, you know what? You made it on the
that,
team.
He filled out the singlet.
Yeah, I filled it out. And it was always I was not good, but it was always like that we would get, every year. Of course, you had another class come into the high school, and you'd have a kid that was better than me at that whatever that weight was, right?
Yeah.
So it was me going, well, Lida, I think we need you at like 152. Because we didn't have a 152, right?
Yeah.
So it was like, hey, we need you at 152, 145. Not working out for you
just
anymore.
filled the spot, so they didn't have to take a fucking 6 points to the other team.
I told this story the other day. God, I don't know where I was. I was with some friends. I wrestled a guy from East Side, and if he's for some reason, watching this podcast, I would love for him to meet, because I will never forget this guy. I don't know what his name is. I can't remember his name. We go to weigh in, and he's wearing like this cut off shirt, right? And I think it was 145 we were wrestling. 6-pack abs, everything. And he had like basketball shorts on, essentially. Walks in, I weigh in, make weight, whatever. He goes, staring me down right before he stood on the scales, just drops his shorts, butt naked, dick hitting his knees. And I was like, I was stunned. I was like, oh my, he steps on. He's like 6 pounds underweight. Yeah. He doesn't need to take his shorts off. Yeah. He doesn't need.
He wanted to see some of that BD energy.
Bro, he steps on the scale and he's just staring at me the whole time. Just like that, with his dick just hitting his knees. Yeah. And I'm like, I just lost the match. Yeah. I'm not beating this guy. It's like,
he mentally beat you on the scale?
When you are 15 years old and a guy walks over there, just drops his basketball shorts, and that thing was like an elephant, and you just lost. You just lost, bro. I was shooting on the wrong leg sometimes. I was like, oh, that's not your leg. I was like, oh, that's a dick.
He just shot the wrong single.
It was bad. It was moments where I was like, all right, just pin me, man, because I can feel it right now, like running up. I think he would do it. You just rub it up against you, like,
Jesus.
Like,
wow, might we digress?
Yeah, man, that was high school wrestling. Yeah. It was fun. Yeah. And then things like that would happen. You're like, "Whoa, God, man, he's a grown man."
Like I said, that's the only sport where you would encounter something like that.
Yeah, like right? It was. I mean, it's such an intimidating thing that he did. Yeah, like he knew what he was working with, and he just. Yeah. But he was like 6 pounds underweight. I was like, you don't have to take your shorts off. I was like,
he wanted you to know. He was like, you see this? This is
he could have stood there with the center block in his hand and been fine still. And
just crazy.
6 pounds.
Yeah, he was like 4 to 6 pounds underweight. Like he was plenty of room to give. Yeah. Didn't have to take his shorts off, but he knew exactly what he was doing. Yeah. Took those shorts off, staring at me the whole time.
He wants you to know he was king ding-a-ling.
White cutoff shirt.
Did he give you a couple of?
No. Just like nothing was going on. Yeah. Like everything was fine. Yeah. And I'm just like,
but did you
wrestle him again?
This is gonna be a bad night.
Did you wrestle him again?
I think I only wrestled him one time, and the first round he ends up pinning me at towards the end of the second round. Mm-hmm. The first round. It was like, I didn't know what to do. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I couldn't stop staring at it. Yeah, and I was like, oh.
Who am I wrestling? Am I wrestling you or that?
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, yeah, you're back here, And it's like, it was a bad scene, man, out there. I was like 15 years old,
Yeah. So when he's staring at you.
By it.
So when he's on the scale and he's staring at you, right? Yeah. Are you staring back at him, or are you doing that, or are you dropping are you going?
I gotta get. You can't help but not it was good peripheral. Like I was staring at him, but I wasn't staring at him. You know what I mean? Like I could look at him in his eyes. You could see it no matter what. Yeah. You know what I mean? It was like this microphone just hanging, and I was like, and it's also like. Yeah. And his whole team knew what he was going to do. Apparently, he does this every time he
fights.
He would wrestle, and it was. And I tell you what, man, God bless him. All the girls in the crowd were cheering for him. He had a
harem there.
He had a crew there. I mean, it was like the Godfather walking out. He had his girlfriend. He was ready to go, man. All these girls were sitting on the front row, and I'm like. Man, this is
That, when you mentioned that there was a guy in our school. He's not with us anymore. He's rest in peace. He's in heaven now. But we would do track, and he was just gifted with just this long piece of meat. Just didn't he get warmed or anything like that, right? And we're sitting there, and I'm sitting there next to my best friend, one of my best friends, and the coach is like, "You guys need to get up." This is track track club. And he goes, you guys need to get up and you guys need to run. Demetrious Johnson, 1600 meter. Nobody can beat him in the district. You know, Jordan Shallow, 400-meter run. Da-da-da-da. And then the guy, Craig Garner was his name. He's sitting there in the back of the thing with his pants down, with his dick, and he's just like this, flopping it around when the coach is giving his speech. I'm sitting there, I'm like, yeah, we're gonna run, man. And I look up, and I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ, Craig. Exactly. And I'm like, dude, what the put your dick away, man. I'm like, what are you doing? I'm just like, he goes, it's big, isn't it? And I was like, of course it's big. Good for you, man. Can we focus on winning this race?
Can you holster that thing?
Exactly.
Can you holster?
Yeah. So when you mentioned that, I was like, oh, God, high school, what a good time. Wrestling, track.
You may be able to confirm this or not, but Dustin Rhodes talks about his dad, Dusty. Mark, we got a new sponsor, Artisan Grange.
Artisan Grange.
They're right here in Texas.
Good.
They do like a hemp pouch, non-tobacco, non-nicotine. Looks like a dip can, so you can still look cool with it in your back pocket.
Get that skull ring in your back
That's
pocket.
right. You can get that ring in your back pocket, right? Like all the cool kids are doing. But they got great flavors, cinnamon, mint. They got like a coffee one as well.
Really?
Oh, yeah. You don't have to spit. You don't have to do any of that stuff. Just a little pouch.
Yeah, let me try one.
Smells good. Throw it in your lip. You can do one in the lower. You can do one in the top. Look at this. You can just fill your mouth full of. My granny used to do snuff up there at the top of her lip.
Yeah. I had a great aunt that did that. Mm-hmm. I had a silver can on her porch.
Well, this no tobacco, no nicotine, Artisan Grange, Texas-based, Texas born and bred, right here, just like you.
Got to be a good company.
It's got to be a good company. All people need to do is just click the link in our description. They can get themselves some cans also. Like I said, tons of different flavors. They all taste really good. And they're just made of hemp, 5 milligrams of CBD. It's not going to get you high. It's not going to get you any of that crap that people will think. It's just good for you.
It's just good for you.
It's just good for you. Maybe it helps you get off tobacco. Maybe it helps get you off nicotine, whatever, and be a little bit more of a natural alternative to
natural
dipping.
alternative.
Yes. So, Artisan Grange.
Artisan Grange.
We appreciate y'all supporting the podcast. Click the link in the description below and pick yourself some Artisan Grange up. He said that. And you may have your own story, but Dustin talks about how he's in WCW and all the guys come out to him and they're like, hey, man, can you go in there and talk to your dad? Like, he's like, everybody's like right outside the locker room. Yeah. And he's like, what are you talking about? It's like, just, you'll see. And he said, I walk in and he said, Dad is laid across a bench in front of the lockers, cowboy hat on, T-shirt, and nothing else.
What's on that T-shirt?
And he's sitting on his side with a piece of paper writing out the card. Yeah. He said, I walk in and I just walk up to him like, Daddy, everything going all right? He's like, yeah. He's like, hey, man, some of the boys would appreciate it if maybe you put a towel over your something. He goes, what's the problem? And he goes, well, look. He's like, your balls are hanging on the floor. He said he's on the bench and those things are flopped over just hanging down, almost touching the ground. He's like, Dad, please put those things away.
We got to get back on track. We're talking about.
So how's the podcast of Mighty? We talked about balls and penises all the time. Unfortunately.
We were doing so well too.
We were doing. Well, I mean, so you started jiu-jitsu in 06, 19 years old. Did you pick up on it pretty quick? I mean,
so I started mixed martial arts at 19. So I went to a gym, and the gym I was at was AMC Pancreation, and the headmaster of it was Matt Hume, renowned, one of the best in the world at fighting himself, and he's gone to Abu Dhabi, ADCC, And I joined the gym, and I didn't know who it was to begin with. Like, I just joined it, just like, oh, I'm just gonna learn how to fight because my buddy said I should join this gym. And I kept on training, had my first amateur match, won that, won my second one, and then the coach was like, okay, we're gonna do different. We're gonna do something different. You're gonna do mixed martial arts, you're gonna do kickboxing, and you go back to MMA, and then you do boxing. And he kept making me go back and forth and into each discipline of fighting, and he thought it was very important that you experience fighting in that one discipline. That way, just in case you come across somebody who specializes in that
one of those
disciplines, that you are familiar with it. And so for me, like, I remember it was my first MMA fight, then I did a second one, and then I did a kickboxing match. And then after I went back to mixed martial arts, and then I did a shoot boxing, which is kickboxing where you just shoot on somebody. And then it will go from MMA back to Muay Thai, then back to MMA, then what was the next one? Boxing. And then he was like, okay, then you're gonna go do some jiu-jitsu tournaments. And then you better submit everybody. So he was kind of like laying the ground, basically the path for me to be good everywhere.
Everywhere, right.
And then next thing you know, like, there was a promotion in our area called Axe Fighting. It was probably one of the best promotions because it was like, if you fought there, it meant like you were legit. Like, there was no shin pads, because when you first do your first 3 amateur fights, you have knee pads, shin pads, big MMA gloves, and you have a lot of protection because it's like, okay, you don't want to get injured and you don't want to cut your opponent. But Axe Fighting was like, no knee pads, no shin pads, little MMA gloves. I got the opportunity to go fight for Charlie Pearson, and Axe Fighting was amazing. Like, we'll go there and I would fight, and it would be MMA fights, and then I would start fighting people. Then I remember I was fighting this guy, a tough guy from over the mountain on the east side, and my coach was like, 126, 126, and I'm like, 126. I'm like, you can't do 126. That's breaking the law. You got to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can't just go 1, 2, because you split your body down the middle, and the left side of your body is all odd numbers. So 1, 3, 5, and then 7, and then 7, 8, 9, and then 10. So I was like, you can't do that. You can't do that. You can't go 1, 2, 6. You can't go 1, 2, then jump to 6. And then I remember he said that, and I self-consciously made the connection when he was telling me when I was fighting. And then after the fight, he goes, I was like, why'd you keep saying I won the fight, beat the and I go, why'd you keep saying 1, 2, 6? You can't go from 1, 2 to 6. You got to go 1, 2, 3, 6, 1, 2, 3, 6. But you can't go 1, 2, 6. And he goes, yes, you can. You can go 1, 2, 6. I'm like, how? He goes, you go 1, 2, and then you go to the angle, and you go 6 uppercut. And I was like, oh, I don't know, you can do that. And he goes, yeah, you can do that, because the guy was blocking like this. He was covering his face. So he goes, you throw the 1, 2, and you go to the angle, and you throw the uppercut up the middle, up here to hit him. And I was like, tell me. He goes, yeah, well, now you know. So, but that was at a very, very young age of me coming into the sport mixed martial arts. So right there, as being, I'm 37 now, looking back, and I was like, I have the intelligence that the IQ that my coach can say something, I can hear it, register it, and say, and have a conversation like, I can't do 1, 2, 6. What are you talking about? I'm in here. Fox, you can't do that. And then that's when I was like, okay, I understand. And he always knew, like, he told me, I was like, dude, like, you're super athletic and you're getting good at this. But there's still more work to do, and I'll go back to the gym and keep on training. And yeah.
Was it natural for you? Because I feel like you were the quickest fighter on transitions. Like, going from, like, watching some of your highlights where you're not even finishing a punch before you're shooting on someone. It felt like sometimes.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. It was. Like I said, like, when I started training in mixed martial arts, I was good. I went into the gym not knowing anything. I had a good foundation with the wrestling, right? And being athletic. And I think with the coach, he was very good about, like, just teaching, like, how to fight in all those areas, like doing the Muay Thai, doing the kickboxing, doing the jiu-jitsu tournaments. And I think when I would go to fight, I would be able to transition in between those things. And I'll never forget, like he said, you have to think about it, like, in my mind, I looked at it was like a whole row of light switches. And, when you flip the switch on, you would go into that realm. And so I would have, the switch from boxing, Muay Thai, kickboxing, wrestling, jiu-jitsu. And I would just go pop, 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 and I would just go back and forth and flip these switches on. And then in the transition is where people kind of lose or fall behind. And for me, I would excel to the transition because while they're boxing, I'm already wrestling. And I would see my coach do the same thing to like world champions, to like Rich Franklin, Spencer Fisher, Jens Pulver, when they would come in. And I'll ask him, I'm like, dude, how are you beating these guys? Like, these guys are the best in the world right now. And he goes, well, they're behind. And I'm like, what do you mean they're behind? At the time, he's already 42, 43. So he's already like, you know, as athletes, we know that, when you hit your 40s, father time starts to kick in. But he goes, well, they're so behind. He goes, I'm like, well, explain. He goes, well, they think I'm boxing. And when they start to box me, I start doing Muay Thai. When they start doing Muay Thai, I go back to boxing. When they start boxing, I go to kickboxing. So he always changed the puzzle piece of the fight. And that's one of the things I took from him, that like when I'm boxing someone, they're like, oh, we're boxing. I'm like, nope, we're wrestling now. Then they're always playing catch up. I'm leading the dance. And that's why I've always been able to succeed in the transitions in my fights.
That's really interesting. But would you transition though? Like just say you're popping somebody with your jab.
Yep. Would I transition to wrestling?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that would be hard for me.
Yeah.
To like, dude, I am lighting this dude up with this jab.
Yeah.
Why would I transition to wrestling? And I think knowing what I know now at 37 and like going through my career, like later in my career, I didn't transition. I would stay somewhere. My last recent fight, when I fought Adriano the third time, like we're moving, and I'm like, oh, I'm having a lot of success in the clinch. I'm like, when I'm outside, he's longer than me. He's like a very tall 135er, great athlete. One of the longest reigning champions one champion at 135, the flyweight division. But I was having more success in the clinch. I was like, wow, you can't hang with me in the clinch. You can't beat me there. And I would just stay there. In the earlier days of my career, I'll be piecing somebody up and I'll take him down. And I'm like, why did I take him down? Because it was like kind of programmed. It was like program. Oh, I beat him in the feet. I'm gonna take him down so I can beat him there. Where now it's like if I can dissect you and I can like, oh, you're very weak in this one area, I will stay there and live and breathe and eat there until you would show a little sign of success there. And once you did that, I would change the game immediately. Once the game got changed a little bit and you got caught up in that game, I'll go back to where you were having deficiencies.
Yeah. Wow. I don't think you ever, I can't ever recall you being in this situation, but when I watch MMA and it's late in the fight, someone gets taken down, getting pieced up, ground and pound a little bit, up against the cage. You can hear the corner, it's like telling you, you got to get up. Like, like no, I mean, no. No, but obviously, how frustrating. Does that register? Like I said, I don't ever recall you being in that situation to that degree. Yeah. But there's a lot of times you see it, and I'm just like, dude, if he could get up, if he would get up, and you're listening to. Guys like Rogan. Well, what he needs to do is he needs to step over and put his foot in it. Yeah, that's what you need to do. But
can you do it?
It just seems so freaking frustrating to me.
Yeah, I always laugh because I remember there's one part in my career. It was early in my career, 2012, when I fought Ian McCall in Australia, and I went on this diet. I was like, it was the first time the UFC was implementing the 125-pound weight class. And I was like, oh, it's gonna go down. I'm gonna fight guys who are my size, who are 5'3", 5'4", not guys who are 5'9" and 5'11" at 135. And I went on this horrible diet. I went on the man cave diet where I only ate things that grow. So my diet consisted of just chicken, steak, and vegetables. That was it, and fruit. No carbohydrates whatsoever. And as we've done research now, that carbohydrates is the best single source of energy. Like there's just nothing could beat it. A lot of people, they go on the diet where it's like, all I eat is I don't eat carbs. I go on a carnivore diet. Even one of these guys who just said he swears by it. The was like, you see why I'm shredded? Because I eat the carnivore diet, da-da-da-da. Next thing you know, He comes and goes, hey guys, guess what? I tried carbs. It's amazing. I feel great. I'm like, yeah, of course, dumbass. But back on track. Back on track. I went on this diet, and I remember fighting Ian McCall. And the first round, I was piecing him up. I rocked him. Then the second round came out. I was like, okay, I'm starting to lose a little pop on my hands. Then the third round, he gets my back, and he has me fully, laser hooks in. I'm like, fuck. And my coach is like, get up, get up. He goes, and he was like, don't turtle, right? Don't go to your stomach, because when you go to your stomach, that's basically like you're giving up.
Yeah,
and then you cover up, and they're going to stop it. And he was like, don't turtle. And I did. And I remember him putting his hooks in. I just couldn't get up. And I remember I was like this. And thank God and thank the ref for not, stopping the fight. Because if he would have stopped the fight, who knows where my career would have went. Right. And that was a one time. He was like, get up. And I was like, I wish I could.
I wish I could right now, right?
Don't you think I would have? And, luckily, the fight went to I won the fight. And that was the only time in any contract that I know of to this date. I feel like I've done a lot of things that only to this date have ever been done. But in the contract, they implemented the 125-pound division to give a champion, and they did a 4-man tournament. It was me, Joseph Benavidez, Ian McCall, and Yusha Yortani. And it was
good fighters. Wow.
Yeah. It was a 4-man tournament, and they said there could be no draw. If it will go to a draw, it will go to a sudden death. But when they read the scorecard, how they had it, the fight went to a draw, and me and Ian McCall were supposed to do another round, a 4th round. But the judges got it wrong and gave me the fight. And so they're like, Demetrious Johnson by split decision. I was like, yeah, I won. We go in the back. Dana White goes, guys, actually, it was a draw. Like, you guys are supposed to do a 4th round. And we robbed the fans of that 4th round. And I was like, hey, you know what? Like, I'm sorry. I didn't do anything wrong.
Wasn't your fault.
Well, my fault.
Yeah.
It wasn't his fault. But we're like, you know what? We're running back. And we ran it back. I think it was like 4 months later. I ended up destroying him because I went on a good diet.
You had some carbs. You ate some taters.
You got a slice of bread in your system.
And that's when I started taking the sport serious. Like, what I mean by serious is that prior to that, I was working full time up till I fought Dominic Cruz for the world championship at 135. But as you know, when you had your first gig in wrestling, you got your first check. It was what, $500, $1,000. It's not enough to live pay your bills.
Yeah.
Right. And for me, my first check in mixed martial arts was $500 to show and $500 to win. It was at King in the Cage. That's $1,000. I think it was $250 to show, $250 to win. And for $500, that doesn't pay for anything.
No, you still got to pay your trainer. You got
to pay your trainer. You got to pay taxes.
Yeah.
And so for me, the longest time in mixed martial arts, I worked 40 hours a week at a construction place called Kerastar. And, each time I'll get the call. Like, I remember getting the call to fight Kid Yamamoto at UFC 126 in 2011, February 5th. It was Super Bowl weekend. Big there was fighting Vitor Belfort. They was like, hey, Demetrious Johnson, can you come fight Kid Yamamoto? And I was like, I'm at work right now. Can I call you back? Can I call you back?
I'm going to get fired.
I'm going to get fucking fired. Next thing you know, I go to my boss's office. I say, hey, Pete, hey. Amazing boss. Say, hey, Pete, I got this opportunity to go to Vegas and fight in a UFC. Can I get time off? And he goes, let me see what I can do. I said, okay, just let me know. And I'll go back to work, stacking. And see, this is the problem when I feel like athletes today, they don't have. Like, for me, it was a passion. It was a side job. Mm-hmm. At the pit. Imagine that. Imagine you go back in your day, you get the call from Vince McMahon. Undertaker, I need you to throw Mankind off the steel cage. And you're like, I got to go back to work. I'll call you back when I have time, right?
Oh, yeah.
Could you imagine that? Like, so you have Dana White calling your coach, or Sean Shelby calling your coach, like, I need Demetrious Johnson to come to the biggest organization in the world to fight a Super Bowl weekend in Las Vegas. And I said, I got to see if I get the time off from work. Anybody today's market, they're like, oh, fuck.
I'm there. Yeah.
I'm there.
Yeah.
Say less. And for me, it was like, I wanted security. I wanted, something that was going to give me a check every single week. And so my whole entire career up to the Dominic Cruz fight, that's when I actually, stopped working. And then when I fought Ian McCall, I still wasn't full-time underneath my coach, Matt Hume. And then after that fight, after I went to a draw, he was like, even when I went on a diet, he was like, all right, you go do that diet. Let me know how it works out from you, right? And in knowing that I was gonna, right? After that fight, he goes, so you're gonna start taking this sport seriously, or you're gonna just keep on off? I was like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, I'm one of the best in the world. He goes, I have a question for you. When professional basketball players go to camp, do you think they just do their own ball, at the park? I said, no. He goes, okay. What about football players? Do you think they do the same? What about boxers? No. He goes, then why are you doing that? I was like, I don't know. And he goes, from now on, when you know what color your poop is. When you eat, I want to know what you eat. When you train, I'm watching you train. And then from that forth, you look at my first Ian McCall fight to my second, I come in, I'm way bigger, was sharp, was doing everything right. And everybody was like, what happened? I was like, oh, I started training.
You started training properly.
I started training properly. And then from there on in, that's when everything just took off in my career.
Wow, yeah. So how long because at the end of my career, I had a limited schedule so I just basically did the really big events the last few years, like the WrestleManias.
Yep.
So obviously when I worked all the time, like you stay in shape. Yep. And you're just in the grind and you're doing it. But at the end, like they would say, all right, hey, you want to do Mania? Yep. So I would back out, like figure I always took 16 weeks. Yep. What was your
for me? I've always been. I think it's just like my wife says I'm crazy, but it's always been like for me that I've always wanted to be strong and fight, because you get the call on week's notice and it's like, oh, can you fight? And there's a couple times I've done short notice fights, and so for me, I've always wanted to be in a good keep good health. But now one of the things I've done to answer more to that, cater to that question, is that everybody talks about sparring. Right? Everybody's like sparring. And Max Holloway, a good friend of mine, he doesn't spar anymore. And for me, at the later stage of my career, I was like, I'm not going to spar anymore. There's no point in sparring and get hit in the head. And so I would go 9 months without sparring until like they're like, hey, we have a fight for you. Does this fight, something that you're interested in? And I'm like, yeah, I think so. Then I would start sparring 2 days a week. Back when I was an amateur, I was sparring maybe 3 or 4 days a week, where it was like, all right, we're doing Muay Thai sparring. Okay, we're doing boxing sparring. Okay, we're doing mixed martial arts sparring. I'll be more gung-ho to be susceptible to being okay with getting hit in the head with the sparring matches. Now, you ain't touching my head. I'm not sparring whatsoever. I just sparred recently for trying to help the next generation in my area. Sure. And I've been into such a high level where it's like, it's just a different level. And I was like, I'll give you a couple rounds, but I move so much, I'm not gonna get hit in the head. Where now, I think the last time I sparred prior to that was like a year ago when I was getting ready for my title defense against Adriano, Colorado.
Wow.
Yeah. Because it's, like you said, we get one body. And for me, after my last fight, Adriano, I've been part of a brain study for fighters. And I've been part of it since 2012, where the Cleveland Clinic, they want to get athletes in who do combat sports, and they want to see the lifespan of a brain, to see how it deteriorates or how it evolves over the course of the years of the athlete. So I've been doing it like every single year. Like I've done it 5 times between 2012 to 2023. And I did my test, and I'm like, they make you read, and they make you do a whole bunch of like memorization tests, and they're like, okay, before we start tests, we're gonna give you 5 words. I think it's apple, cow, house, moo, and milk. Just 5 words. And you say it 3 times. And then after that, you go through the whole entire study. He goes, hey, you remember those 5 words I told you? What are they? And you gotta repeat them. And I remember I would repeat them verbatim, just like apple, cow, blah, 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 blah. But after doing the whole testing from 2012 to 2023, and he looks at my brain scan, he goes, Demetrious, your brain has not aged 1 bit out of your whole entire career. And you've obviously gotten smarter. You read more you enunciate your words better than you did in 2012, which is supposed to happen, right? Like as you age, you're supposed to get more wisdom, more intelligent. And he goes, your brain hasn't changed 1 bit. Like,
oh, good for you, man.
You're lucky. Granted, I've never been knocked out of my career. So right there when he said that, and I was like, okay, thank you, Doc. I appreciate that. So now
I don't need to spar.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not worth it.
It's
the way I
not worth
think,
it,
yeah.
right? At 37, it's like, why put myself in that situation,
Yeah.
right? And especially having 3 kids now and beautiful wife and trying to build bigger things I can do when I'm like 60, 70, 80 years old. It's like, I don't need to spar. So that's like, back to the context of the of the question, that's what I kind of like cut back on. It is a sparring. I like to stay in good shape because I still like to do jiu-jitsu on a daily basis, but now it's the sparring.
Yeah. It makes a lot of sense. It really does. And it sounds kind of like what they're doing. It sounds like our impact testing we do for our concussion protocol. It's called the impact test. And once you get concussed now, you go into the system and you have to, the way you were describing the test sounds a lot like what we have to do. They'll give you an image or something like that, and then give you a bunch of questions, and they come back to it. And
it's smart. It's why not? Why not? Because I'm sure, just like in my sport, and I'm assuming in your sport, the biggest thing is the safety of the athlete.
Yeah.
Right. Like we want to make sure the athletes are being taken care of in mixed and in the UFC and One Championship and all the other organizations in the world. Athletes are the number one. Their health and the safety is our number one priority, but a lot of times it kind of gets swept under the rug, where the athletes don't take it upon themselves to get themselves tested. Or I still get blood work every 6 months to make sure I'm staying healthy. I still try to get EKGs. I still try to get my eyes done if I have problems, because I'm just so routine into that from all the years of me fighting. And so like, I just want to make sure I'm around for when my kids get older, so I can be able to help them out and be able to have conversations. And so it's a big thing for me.
Yeah, how long was it before you started taking that serious?
I'd say probably the mid 2000s. Like when I started feeling myself kind of starting to like not be able to stay out and then go out and still deliver at the top of my, then I was like,
I mean, that's 14, 15 years of just being the Undertaker. So you're now 20 years into your career almost at that point.
Yeah. And then when I started, changing my nutrition and working out, like I would go through spurts where I would train, I'd get myself in phenomenal shape, and then I'd get in phenomenal shape, and then I would regress back and start drinking again at night and
party hard.
Yeah. But by the mid 2000s, it was just like, no, man, you can't. Man, everything's starting to ache. So, all right, you can't be 330 pounds anymore. So that's when I start scaling it down until I kind of, okay, well, 295 to 305 is kind of where you need to be. And then
what are you now? Right now?
Right now, I'm probably 285 maybe.
That's awesome.
So I just here lately I've kind of been fluctuating. I went way down, and then I was like, I don't, aesthetically it doesn't work for me. And I don't mean it doesn't matter for anything that I do professionally now, but it's still like just
you want to feel good. You want to look good, baby.
Yeah, that's it. I just want to, I want to pop.
Just
he looked at it like that's where he was like,
there's no camera back there.
I'm not going to do it to the camera. So what's he flexing that buggy whip for?
Buggy whip.
Got arms like a buggy whip. But that's really good, because there's nothing said. Like if you've seen somebody that's in the fight game, like a boxer that fought too long, and like Ali at the end, you got Parkinson's and all that.
Yeah.
Riddick Bowe was another one that took a lot of.
It's a lot of them, and the thing is, for me, we're talking off camera, and one of the things that like touched me, I always felt like I was different, meaning that I came from a background of work, right? Like, and there was no weight class for me, so you look in the infancy stage of the UFC, because that was the biggest premiere in America.
Right.
And the smallest weight class they had was 155. And I remember Sean Shirk. Nobody even talks about this guy, the muscle shark, Sean Shirk. He was the champion. And then they got rid of, before we became the champion, he was there. They got rid of that division because it wasn't popular. So the smallest division was 170. There was no way in hell I was going to weigh 170 pounds, out of college. I was like 122 pounds.
Right.
And so there was no opportunity for me to take this sport to where it is today. And then so when I jumped into mixed martial arts, it was a passion of mine, and I worked full time. And then eventually, when I started fighting, my coach was like, "Oh, we can go, you can go to Japan, but there's just no money in Shuto, which is the
Shooter box.
The Shooter box, yeah. The Shooter box was the team in Brazil, but the Shuto was like the actual organization in Japan where you didn't make any money. And so for me, it was like I was just always different. And I told your co-host, I was like, I never fell in love with the lights. And there was an athlete who loved being called, like when he would go fight you, like he loved the lights. You love like, yeah, I'm the best in the world. And for me, I was like, I would never fall in love with that. Like I didn't want to make that my identity. And so when I was going through my mixed martial arts career, it was like I would show up, I would fight, and I'll go home, pressure wash the fence. I would show up and fight, go home and take the kids and change diapers and all that stuff. So I always had a separation between my work and then coming home into the normal life. Now that I'm 37, making that transition out of fighting, it's been a lot easier. How we were talking about how some guys they need that, like they search for that gratification. Where for me, I'm like,
even if it's not a financial thing, it's just but the financial thing is one thing, but it's that their purpose and the only thing that they identify themselves as is that thing, whether it's a fight or whatever. And I think wrestling, we've talked about it before, I think that's probably where you see it the most. I mean, where guys get lost in their character, they get lost in that life, and they don't understand how to
pull away from it.
And unfortunately, I think it's not even their fault sometimes, right? I think sometimes people have this expectation that you're always the Undertaker.
You're always on. You're always on.
You're supposed to be the Undertaker.
Yeah.
Ric Flair has to be Ric Flair.
Woo!
And
he is. But.
Yes. But I mean, I think that's the thing is like, I think a lot of people, they look at professional wrestlers because they play this character or they are this character on TV.
Yep.
And the good ones, like the Undertakers of the world and the Ric Flairs and the Hulk Hogans and all these people that have these long Hall of Fame careers, they do it so good, and that's why they're able to have this Hall of Fame career, because they built this character and they were this good with this character.
Yep.
And I think there's so many people expect them to be that
24/7
at a restaurant on a Thursday night when they're sitting there with their wife and kids.
Yeah.
And that's difficult, And I think a lot of those guys, though, they don't know how to separate that sometimes.
Yep.
They don't know how to be just Mark.
Yep.
I think you've done a really good job over the last couple of years of, I mean, I know it was tough, but I mean, I think you've done a really good job of.
Yeah. It just, a lot of the things that you were saying really resonates with me as far as cutting it off, and it took me a long time to figure that out because I was Undertaker all the time.
Yep.
And it took my wife and my kids to be able to like, okay, this is where I really want to be now at this part of my life, and it helped me shut that door because everyone had always expected me to be Undertaker, and and I'd always expected to be I knew it was going to come one day.
Yeah,
but I really didn't. It was just like
so how did you one, I never forget when you came to Seattle, Washington, and you were at the Comcast Arena, and you came out there, you did something with Kane, and I was in the back, and and I was like, hey, you're like, you're the and you do your and I was like, it's okay, boys, like,
there he is.
Yeah, there he is.
He's
So how did you I'm still active, right? I haven't, retired, but how did you, as an athlete at a high level, how did you come to terms when it was like, hey, you know what, baby, I'm about to lay in that casket. I'm done. Goodbye, Undertaker. I love you. And now I'm just Mark. You don't call me Undertaker anymore. You call me Mark. So how did you, navigate that? Because I haven't done it yet, and I haven't talked. I think you're the first athlete that I'm talking to about like that transition when you're like, I'm done. Like I don't, because a lot of people are like, you're Mighty Mouse. You can do it. Don't get me wrong. I'm still fast. I can still fight if I choose to. But there's gonna be a time where the mouse doesn't want the cheese anymore. The mouse is gonna stay in his hole and not get caught in the trap.
Yeah.
Walk me through, like.
Well, that's once those feelings start creeping in, you got to listen to them because what you do is way too dangerous just to do it because somebody's telling you that's what you need to do. Once you start getting that not that self-doubt, but you have to crave what you do. I think you have to crave to be in there to prove that you're the best fighter at your weight division. For me, the decision was it was made for me. Just like I said when we talked earlier, Father Time. My body just couldn't deliver what I wanted it to do anymore. Like I said, in my mind and in my heart, I still wanted to be out there doing it.
Yeah.
And I pushed, I was looking for that perfect ending. I was looking for that Dan Marino,
best quarterback ever.
Wow, you just oh my gosh.
It's my favorite guest of all time.
Oh, you just made the number one for him. What I was talking about with Dan Elway, the Dan Elway finish, right? He wins 2 Super Bowls. John Elway. I'm
the second best quarterback in that class.
Anyway, John Elway. Gosh, I'll never hear the end of that. John Elway wins 2 Super Bowls, rides off into the sunset, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And like for me, I was looking for just the match. I was looking for that match where I could hang my hat on and say, there it is, boys. Go get it, right?
Yep.
And it was just, I was at the point where my body just couldn't deliver what my mind's eye saw.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I listened to my body, but my mind and my heart weren't there yet. So there was a time I had to catch up,
inner conflict,
and figure out, how to fill that void. And man, I discovered podcasting, and it's really been awesome. No.
Well, I think the other part to you is you're a perfectionist as well, though.
Well,
right?
yeah.
And that's where you're not going to have in your head what the match that you want is WrestleMania 25.
Yeah.
And you want that as your last match, but you didn't want WrestleMania 25 to be your last match.
Right.
And WrestleMania 25, pound for pound of his match, may not just be the best Undertaker match, but it's one of the best wrestling matches ever. But even with that match, you talk about one thing in that match, probably more than anything, and it was the dive.
Yeah. The dive.
And it's like, and you talk about that in a manner of the mistake I made. And you'll say, man, I had almost a perfect match except for this one thing. And you're such a perfectionist when it comes to that you're never going to have that perfect last match, I don't think. You know what I mean?
Well, and that's just, I don't think anybody does, but then
you're chasing it. Though.
You're chasing the dragon, man. You're just, I know it's in there. I've had it once, right? I know it's in there, and I know that and you fool yourself into like, okay, I know that I don't move this well, but I can do this and I can do this, and I'm smart enough to know this, and then things start happening and like, wow, these kind of things don't happen to me, but like the Goldberg match.
Yeah.
I had this match with Goldberg in Saudi Arabia, and it was just it was horrible. And he hurt his head, and it was hot, and just a bunch of things went wrong. And normally when things like that would happen, like I pick up on it, I know exactly what to do, how to fix this, how to go to plan B and make everything and I didn't do it. I couldn't do it, and there's time off involved and all that too, where I'm not as sharp. So yeah, it's tough when you don't have. You could just ride that horse too long sometimes.
I love that. Ride that horse too long. I've been trying to find little things to tell people. Like one of them is like, boys, when you go to a party and then you're having a couple beers, you have a couple drinks and all that, and the next thing you know, you have 5, 6, 8, 9. You end up drunk. You end up with a horrible donkey. That's when you should have stopped at 2. Like you don't want to stay. You don't want to stay.
All of a sudden, you're wrestling the dude that I wrestled at 145.
I always tell people, I said, man, you don't want to be there when the lights come on.
Yeah,
that's a bad sign.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was like so that's like for me. I told her, I was like, you don't want to stay at the club too long. You just want to go there, have a good time, and get out. Right? And now I'm gonna take that new one. You don't want to be on that horse too long. You want to get off it when you get to your destination. Get off and go enjoy your life.
Is it harder, you think, for guys like both of y'all that are the top of your sport versus a mid-card guy or something like that when it comes to hanging it up?
I think it might be harder for the mid-card guy, just because they're still searching for that validation of like
that moment.
That I was the best. Like I headlined. Like I never forget like going to Las Vegas and I said never fall in love with the lights. And now where I'm at in my career, there's a part of me where it's like I didn't appreciate it enough. Because like flying into Las Vegas and then you're driving on a freeway going to your hotel and you see UFC 197 Johnson versus Dotson 2 and it's like fuck, that's me right now. Then you get to the MGM Grand Garden Arena, you're there, you're the main event, and it's like everybody's like, ah! And I'm like, can I get home so I can pressure wash my fence? I gotta get that done. HOA's on my ass, right? It's like you don't appreciate it at the time, but now like where I see the new generation doing it, like you see Sugar Sean O'Malley, he's about to headline potentially the Sphere, he's getting all this stuff. I'm like, you know what? There's a part of me that's like, fuck man, I should have like enjoyed it more. But there's a part of me that's like, you know what? I'm happy for you. Like I had my time. I laid like as you laid the foundation for those guys to do the amazing things, and I feel like that's where I'm at now in my career.
Yeah, I know it's hard for him to go back or to go to an event and watch other people wrestle. Is it hard for you to go to an event and watch it as a spectator? Because do you have that thing like, man, I really wish I was in the octagon tonight?
I mean, yeah, no. Like like I said, I've always been different. Where I think about like I never forget watching Rory McDonald versus Robbie Lawler. It was a great fight back and forth. They're both bloody, just beat the and I'm sitting there, everybody's like, oh, some just bleed, and I'm like, God, how many concussions did they get? Man, I hope they got a good paycheck. I hope they took care of them. Right? I wasn't fascinated about how dope the fight is. I was more like worried about the athlete. So for me, it's always a hard thing for me to get into the fight because I'm thinking about I've been there.
The fighter perspective.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what I'm looking at. So like when me and my producer are talking, I'm like, he's like, oh man, that fight was great. And I was like, they suck. They haven't taken the time to because my coach is very good. Like if I go out there and I would beat the just beat the and I would come home and then me and him would fight. Like me and him would literally fight each other. And he, at the beginning of my career, I didn't understand what he was doing. Beat the I'm like, okay, all right. Go out there and fight again. Wouldn't celebrate. I'm like, good job.
Right.
Thank you. Then you go shake the coach's teammate's hand. Come home. We would fight again. You beat the out of me. And then even when I was a professional in WEC and UFC, win, come back home, beat the like, what the is going on here? I'm like, did I do? Then the one day I remember forget. I beat Miguel Torres. I broke my leg in that fight. I came home after I healed. I started sparring. I was like, all right, let's go. You're gonna beat the and we would just fight. We got like, blah, blah, blah. He's beating the fuck out of me. And after we got done, I was like, so what's the big deal? Why are you kicking the And he goes, you're at the top of the world right now. I have to bring you down and humble you.
Keep you humble.
Keep you humble. Let you know there's so much more that you can attain. Like you just, everybody in out the world think you're the best in the world. It's like, you're not the best in the world. And for me, that just stuck with me. So then when I would win my fights, it would be like 7 consecutive title defense, right? But he beat that into me, almost like a form of PTSD, right? Mm-hmm. Because not like real, I'm like, oh, but it's like he beat that in me. So when I would do my fights, I'm like, I want to shout out to my coaches, Matt, Brad, da-da-da-da. And yeah, it was a good fight, and I was very humble. And then everyone's like, why are you so humble? And I was like, because I'm just a small shark in a big sea. Like, I'm just fighting this little shark. There's better people out there. But he did that to me, and it just made me this super humble person. Yeah, we went on a.
And when you're on the top like that, you've talked about it before. There's always somebody behind you.
There's always
There's always somebody that's
it's
training harder, doing everything they can to place. They get hungry.
Yes.
And sometimes you get complacent when you're on the top.
Yes. And I never got complacent because he was always there to beat me. And then this one, a huge shift in my career happened where I left the UFC. I went to one championship. I started fighting over there. And then I went to 135. And this is the opportunity where he could not corner me. He could not coach me anymore when I would fight. Throughout my whole entire career, like amateur days, UFC days, he was always in my corner. And he was like, I can't corner you anymore because I actually work for one championship. He was on the vice president on the board. And so I was like, okay. And he goes, here's the thing. We've done everything in mixed martial arts. We've 11 consecutive title defenses. The first ever flyweight champion, Mighty Wiz Bar, all this stuff. Now this is your journey as a martial artist where you have to fight, and I can't be there with you anymore. I can train you, but I can't be there. And so I would have to start thinking for myself when I would fight. And I had my teammates to help me, but I went through my first fight against Yuya Wakamatsu, won that one. And then I had my second fight against Tatsumitsu Wada. And then my sister died. And then I never forget being in the hospital, watching her die. Then after she died, I, drive home and I called my coach. I'm like, hey, I'm not going to be training. I can't make it to training. He goes, well, why not? I was like, I have to bury my sister. And he goes, oh, shit. He goes, truly sorry. Let me know if you need anything from me. So I buried my sister. And then after I buried my sister, I'm sitting there and I'm like not contemplating, I'm just like, going through stuff. And I'm man, I was like, every single kid I've ever had, Tyron, Maverick, and Tanith, I've always been in training camp. When I gave birth to Tyron, I pushed the baby out, she had a C-section. I'm like, hey, I love you, good job. I had to go up this street and go fight. And this was in 2013, I fought in Seattle. Left her when she was going through, basically has a cesarean, and I'm going to go fight. Hat Maverick, 2015. I left to go fight Kyojo Horiguchi in Canada. Getting ready to fight Henry Cejudo, 2018. I have Tanith. So, and then I'm getting ready for a fight. Through all that, my mom had cancer. And then when my sister dies, what am I doing? Getting ready for another fight. And I'm like, my life has evolved around fighting. And then after that happened, I lost my fight against Adriano. I got knocked out for the first time. This was during COVID. And I was like, I'm so done being perfect. I am done trying to live by this standard of whatever I put in my head. And I was like, this. I'm just going to do me. I'm just going to be who I am. And then that's when I believed in myself and my brand. And that's when everything changed.
Kind of like taking a deep breath and letting it out.
Yeah, a deep breath, letting it out. And then that's when I had the amazing knockout against Adriano where I fought Rod Tang. That's when it was a special rules fight where first round was Muay Thai, second round was mixed martial arts, third round was Muay Thai, fourth round was mixed martial arts. I did that fight. That took my brand to a different level. And then I fought Adriano, and that's when I did the right hand, and then he was falling, and then he fell into the cage, and I did the flying knee, and everybody was like, dude, what the it's like you keep ascending new levels in mixed martial arts. How are you doing it? And I'm like, I just don't care anymore. I just truly don't care if I lose, win. I just want to enjoy this time. And then, yeah.
Did you ever have that moment in your career where you were just like, I'm tired of being perfect in the ring. I'm just going to go out and just.
Yeah, it kind of in a different way. Again, there was that time period where we had a influx of old talent moving out and new talent that was coming up. So I mean, I kind of went from I'd stopped having to chase, right? I was the guy, and then now it went right into me like grooming these guys before my day was up. So
you could breathe a little bit and not have
there was really nobody that I like that could push me, so it was like, okay, I'm cool here.
Yeah.
Now let me reach back and pull as many guys up as I could. So.
Yeah. Well, I have to ask you about this. Two things.
Okay.
First one is the arm bar off the suplex.
Yeah.
Was that something you were working on? Is that something that just in the moment you saw it?
So the thing that's always interesting for a lot of people might say, like I said, I just felt like I was just not. I feel like I was different back then, meaning that I still took the regular classes. Like there was no pro class, and then there was this class. Like where only the pros could go train. I was still trained with your everyday, mom and pops guy who worked at Microsoft, guy who worked at who's a financial advisor. And so Matt was literally talking about, well, one, he did it to me, and he said like he were fighting each other, and then he threw me up and armbarred me, and I'm like, what the was that? And he goes, well, you're so good now, I just can't armbar you the conventional way. I have to think outside of the box. And I was like, show me this armbar. He goes, well, you basically do a wrestler's, suplex, but then you also transition into a sit out. Like when wrestlers sit out, you suck back. So it's a wrestler suplex to a suck back. And Matt likes to teach in concepts, because when somebody loses their balance, what is the first thing they do? They kiss their balance. They go, oh.
Yeah, they reach back.
They reach back. They try to kiss their balance. And so Matt was explaining, he goes, when people lose their balance, their arms fly. So if you get someone off balance, they'll go like this, and you can find the lever, you can expose the target, and when somebody's off balance, they're not worried about getting punched in their face. They're worried about catching their balance. And so he would always teach in concepts. And first he did it to me, then he taught the concept. And then we were literally just working on, and so I would practice in class about how to do the Mighty Whiz Bar. And then one day he was teaching about how to force people to shift their weight. Because if I'm trying to be heavy here, you're not gonna be able to lift me up because I'm being heavy. But if I can force you to move your weight on your own, then I will become light. And so he literally just got done teaching that. And when I was going into the fight, I learned how to do all these things we call the toolbox. And it's like, I can always pull out a tool to get the job done. So I never forget, I was fighting Ray Borg and I was beating him up, and then he shifted, like he did something to make himself heavy. He was like, ugh! Like he was like heavy. And I was like, oh, you became heavy. I was like, huh, interesting. And I was like, okay, well, we just went through this in class. I got to do something to force you to move your weight. And I was just kneeing him in the butt, and he goes, huh. He elbowed me in the back, and I was like, oh, you just shifted your weight. And I was like, oh, perfect. And I just threw him up and did the armbar. And that's when I was like, I'm a and I just tried it, and it worked out.
Well, it worked out.
I'm just gonna try it.
Out. Yeah,
maybe my next fight,
that's awesome.
I'll just throw that into the repertoire of my next fight. Yeah. Just something simple like that.
Yeah. But like I said, I just felt I was different because I didn't separate myself from the normal student in AMC.
Yeah.
Like I would keep going to classes because Matt would teach those concepts, and I would always fight Matt, and Matt would do things to me, and I'll ask him. And I always ask so many questions about how do you do this, and he was able to teach me, and I was able enough to have the athleticism and the IQ to be able to harness it and then do it. And that's when the Mighty Whiz Bar came into play.
It's insane.
It's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. To watch that is, I don't know, man. I look at it and it just goes back to what you were so freaking quick. Like it was insane. It's insane to watch you fight, in my opinion. I think you are. I mean, do you feel like there's anybody quicker than you in the sport?
I think, 1,000%. I think there's people who are a lot quicker than me. I don't think there's people out there who have the creativity as me. I think guys like John Jones, and I think guys like Sugar Sean O'Malley, I think they're creative, but I don't think you'll see somebody like pull a move. Like you haven't seen anybody pull a move like that out before, right? Like, when a Korean Zombie came on the scene and he did the twister submission against Leonard Garcia, that's a basic wrestler guillotine, right? It's like, that's a pin, right? He just turned it into something else. But I haven't seen somebody to this day have kind of like the IQ, I don't want to say IQ, but just the creativity that I had.
The balls to try it. say it. The way it should, brother.
That doesn't work. However you want, but that's exactly what
things turn out a little different if that don't work. I don't know.
I'll go with what he said. The ball.
But I think you're right though. Like you were creative, and that creativity, what it spawned was, like I was saying earlier, your transitions and everything else were so quick, and you would do stuff that most people just wouldn't do or wouldn't try to do coming off a strike or whatever. And I just think that it set you apart from everybody else. And you were so far ahead of everybody for so long that everybody was playing catch up with you.
Yeah, I always think about, like, you know, now that the argument is like, oh man, he didn't fight anybody who was good, blah, blah, blah. That's like saying Michael Jordan didn't play against the best basketball players of his time. Yeah. Right? Like, you can't, like, or Undertaker was never good. He didn't go against the athletes he wouldn't get, like, today's age. It's like, of course, like, you can't compare the athletes of the Undertaker's time or my time to 2024's time. Like, you know,
we'd kill him.
Yeah, you're f***ing right, baby. I mean, that's the biggest thing. And, like, yes, I was probably ahead of my time. And you know what? Whose fault was that? That ain't my fault.
That's not your fault.
That ain't my fault. Hey, I wish the competition was on my level at that time, because if they were on my level, who knows what I would have been able to do. I would probably be more creative at that time, right? Like, I feel like when you have, it's like pressure makes diamonds. Yeah. Right? Like, if people were saying that the competition I was going against was not on my level, I would like to think different, because I was able to do a lot of amazing things to the highest level of competition that was presented to me at that time. As other great athletes, Muhammad Ali, The Undertaker, you look at Michael Jordan, you look at, you know, Stephen Curry, the list just goes on. Yeah. Right? I think in 10 years from now, you look at the greatest basketball player today, there's going to be people like, oh, that guy sucks now. I mean,
because of such and such.
It's like you cannot discredit somebody's time frame of when they were competing in mixed. It's like this. You just can't do that in any sport. Yeah. And so for me, yes, I probably was ahead of my time, but it's like Tupac. People are like, oh man, if Tupac was a rapper today, he wouldn't be. You can't say that. No. You just can't say that. So I was just very grateful that I was successful in my time, and I was healthy enough to be able to do that.
Yeah. And, you know, Joe Rogan has come out and claimed that he believes you're pound for pound the greatest fighter that's ever been in the sport. Yeah. First of all, how does that make you feel? And second of all, who do you put up there? Who's your Mount Rushmore of guys?
Yeah, I think obviously it's awesome to have that recognition from Joe Rogan, who's been watching the sport literally forever, longer than I've been in it. And I'm always grateful for that. And for me, it's always funny because people are like, well, that guy was never a champion. Like Gegard Mousasi was always one of the guys I love watching, because his stint in Dream and in the UFC, even though he never became a champion, for me, I always like to look at an athlete like, can he wrestle? Can he grapple? Can he strike? Can he do X, Y, and Z? That's what gives me that stamp of like approval. So he's always gonna be one of my all-time favorites. Anderson Silva, you know, he's been able to do everything, grapple, never a big wrestler, but he can grapple, submitted Chael Sonnen, submitted Travis Lutter, a guy who was a jiu-jitsu guy. And everybody's like, oh, Travis Lutter's going to beat Anderson Silva because he's a grappler. He ends up fucking put him in a triangle. You can't leave John Jones off that list. You know, even though John Jones has his stint with the picogram of it, you throw a picogram at a so John Jones, I felt like every single time he's been able to fight an opponent in his earlier stage, he can do whatever he wanted to them. Then you got like Khabib Nurmagomedov. You know, Khabib, I think the only thing that hurts his claim is that he wasn't active enough. But as we talked earlier, it's like, you know, injuries happen in mixed martial arts. And then, you know, I like to think myself on that GOAT list, because I still to this day don't think there will ever be a flyweight to be able to do what I was able to do. Granted, I didn't sell out, you know, actually I did sell out, but I've never sold, you know, 500,000 pay-per-views. You know what I mean? So those are the guys I would have to have on that list.
But that was because everybody knew you were going to win.
Nigga didn't buy it, and that son of a bitch didn't buy it either.
No, I'm lying. I probably did buy it.
He buys all of them. He just falls asleep before that.
That's what happened. Undertaker, he's like, I wake up at the credits.
You're like, oh, man.
He was like, "That was a good movie. That was a good fight."
No, I don't hardly watch it, but I do. Like, I get all the fights, and sometimes it's the only time it gets quiet in my house. And
That
next
late.
thing you know, I'm just like,
Yeah.
and then I wake up and it is Zuffa.
Yeah.
Like, oh.
I've never understood that. You know, when I was a kid, I never forget, like, it was right when the UFC started showing fights in the movie theater. Mm-hmm. I never forget, it was GSP versus, I can't remember who it was, a big fight. And I'm like, I used to be that fanboy. I'm like, oh man, GSP's fighting. And at this time I was in mixed martial arts. I wasn't in the UFC yet. And my coach, Matt, he had, I think, three kids at the time. And then he's like this, he's sitting there sleeping or whatever. And I'm like, Matt, GSP's fighting. And then somebody goes, you understand when you get your own and then sure enough, I have my kids. I'm like, I'm sitting there fucking sleeping.
Well, at least you're on the West Coast to where, it comes on at 7 p.m. On the East Coast, main card starts at 10 p.m. And I'm sitting there like,
I feel sorry for it.
Yeah.
Even when I fight on the East Coast, like, man, you want to fight at MSG? I'm like, hell no. He was like, why not? And I was like, okay, let me give you a couple of reasons why. I was like, one, I'm the main event, which means I'm not making that walk to the octagon until like 12:30 or 1 a.m. I was like, newsflash, you know who fights at 12:30 or 1 a.m.? Drunk people. And typically, they're beating their wives. And I am not neither of those guys, right? So I hated fighting on the East Coast.
Dude, it's like the Diaz Masvidal boxing match like a week ago. Man, I'm watching all the prelim fights, everything on that, right? Like, there's nothing else on TV right now, so I'm watching like every fight of people I don't even know who they are. Yeah. That fight doesn't start till 1 a.m. East Coast.
Exactly.
Dude, I wasn't. Well, this is a little different. When Fury and Ngannou fought.
Oh God!
I was there.
It's like 4 a.m. when you're.
And I'm like, oh God! Stay awake. The camera's on you. Stay awake. Like, holy hell, is this night ever going to end?
Because it started at like what, midnight Saudi Arabia time?
Yes.
Yeah.
See, that's what for me it's
and
like.
You flew in like a day before, so you're not adjusted at all.
Oh my gosh! Yeah. It's like, oh my. Oh, stay awake.
That's misery.
Stay awake.
Sometimes I just don't understand. Like for me, it's like, and especially very common in boxing. Boxing is like, all right, like let's say that the fight before it got quick knockout. They're like, all right, well let's take a look at the main event. You know, we got Gervonta Davis taking on.
Start now.
Just start the.
Yeah.
We ready to rock? Let's go! Come on, let's get it.
They go backstage. Their hands aren't taped, and they're like, "Oh God
it's like
Almighty!"
45 more minutes, and it's like I'm getting the highlight reel of Masvidal's career, and I'm like, I know about his career. Everyone here knows
That's
about
why
his
I'm
career.
watching.
Yeah,
I don't need the recap.
I don't need to hear Diaz talking crap. I know he talks crap. I was like, just bring them out to the ring.
We got to figure out. We got to get to the bottom of this. Obviously, it's
got to be some type of like money. There's money involved there somewhere.
There's
It's
somewhere.
Like, they can't start the fight till whatever. But it's like there's no commercials going on right now. Like I don't
it's
understand.
Like it's a pay-per-view. I already gave you my goddamn money, so give me the fight.
Dude, man, when that started at 1 a.m., I fell asleep.
Yeah.
I woke up.
Yeah.
And they hadn't started the fight yet. I thought it was over.
You're probably bed like this.
I thought they were walking back to the locker.
He was in bed like this. He was like,
I mean, in bed, and man, I fell asleep during like Floyd Mayweather's guy that falls like 18, 19 years old. Yeah, and he fights. I fall asleep right after that, right?
Yep.
I wake up, apparently another fight had happened.
Yep.
It's 1 a.m. Bro, I watch this fight. Now I'm awake. I'm going to go to sleep till 4.
Yeah.
I couldn't go back to sleep. And I was like, dude, I was in such good sleep. And something woke me up, and I wake up, and they're like walking out to the ring. And I was like, I was like, they haven't started fighting yet.
Yep.
It's like, oh my, but it wound up being a really good fight.
Yeah, it was a great fight.
Did you?
I see it. Oh.
Man, it was
a good fight. It was good.
Yeah.
Diaz won.
He won. Yep.
Yeah,
Diaz won. It was a decision. I think there are two different type of athletes. I think Diaz is more of an athlete that is he likes to stay in that zone too, and he's not that, that's that. He doesn't generate a lot of power in a short distance to where Jorge Masvidal can. But Nate Diaz does a good job of crossing the void, getting on his opponent, staying on him, and not giving his opponent an opportunity to breathe. And that's what he did against Jorge Masvidal, so he won that fight.
Do you think that the decision was the correct decision?
I think so. This is the thing about boxing. Like, are you scoring like the best punches? Even though Jorge Masvidal outlanded Nate Diaz, you gotta look at the activity. Right?
Diaz outworked him.
But didn't outland him, but outworked him, just putting the pressure on him, right? And we had Diaz on the podcast, and Diaz goes, I don't want to box, I want to do MMA, but this is the only opportunity that he could do it, because in mixed martial arts, when you get in a contract with the promotion, you can't go do mixed martial arts anywhere else. Yeah. It has to be MMA only in that promotion. So the next resort was boxing, and that's what him and Jorge Masvidal agreed to do.
And he's calling out Strickland at the end.
Nate
Diaz, I mean, he just talks so much crap. I love it. Yeah, it's absolutely hilarious. But I mean, it was. You need to go back and watch it. It was a good. It was a good
the
fight.
Opportunity to watch it. If not, just do the highlight play.
I was a little worried that it was not going to be a good boxing match.
I agree.
And it may. Boxing purists will never admit it, but it may have stolen fight of the year when it comes to boxing.
I don't want to go that far. No, don't think that.
But I mean, like in the sense of like activity, like typically watching boxing, a lot of times it takes about 3 rounds before somebody starts really throwing punches.
Yeah,
dude, they were just nonstop the whole time.
Yeah.
Which what I got really excited about that fight was at the top of the poster and everything on it, it says "Last Man Standing."
Yeah.
All I want, I will pay whatever to have those two in a boxing match. And you fight till somebody doesn't get off the stool.
Oh yeah, you know who? That's Nate Diaz gonna get off the stool. He'll let my turn get off the stool.
Like Diaz will never stop.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think they did that. Jake Paul and Nate Diaz. Somebody asked, like in the correct, like as another MMA fighter, they were like, "What's your prediction?" And the guy goes, "Well, 10-round fight. Jake Paul's gonna win." They said, 50-round fight. Nate
Diaz always going to answer that no.
He's like,
unless you put his lights
if
out.
This is a 50-round fight, Diaz is going to beat him every time. He goes, but the 10-round fight, I think Paul's got it.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, this was a fun one.
Yes.
Yeah, man.
I mean, to be sitting here with another legend is exciting for me as, a person that gets to sit here and watch. I've gotten used to sitting here with this guy, so
he's looking at your feet.
Well, he's got a thing for him.
I'm trying to block him.
My OnlyFans link is in the description for my feet. But
excuse me while I go.
But no, man, to be sitting here with another legend like yourself, and also to see what you're doing now. I mean,
thank you, man.
You've got the podcast going. You're not much older than us on the podcast. I mean, I think you're in the 30s on your episodes right now, correct?
Yeah, 33. Mighty Cast on YouTube. We're loving it. I love talking to people, and we had the Undertaker on and Mark on, and it was a good time. So it's like you said, it's that transitioning.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I think you're going to do well. You're good at it. You're very good. Good interviewer, engaging.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, I think you're going to do really well.
Thank you.
Yeah, he's always looking for my replacement. So you potentially got another job.
I'll wear
today.
shoes. Don't worry, dog.
I know, hey, brother. I'm good with that.
You potentially may have found my replacement today with you. So you never know. Oh man, another great episode though. Seriously, thank you so much for showing up and coming out and visiting us and coming to the episode, coming out to Austin. I just want to say thank you to Happy Dad and First Phorm and BlueChew and Mando and Artisan Grange, and we've got a lot of sponsors now. Like these people. They're really into us, I guess. Support us.
Love you guys.
I don't know about all that.
Mark, once again, thank you for showing up this week.
Hey, it's my pleasure.
Yeah.
Well, I got a fighter on. I'm going to be here.
Oh, yeah. This is what I have to do. I have to book MMA fighters.
Yeah.
That's the thing. That's, if it's somebody else, I'm like, hey, man, this is like an actor. He's like,
I'm busy. I'm busy with that. I
got this thing with the kids, man.
Yeah. Once AI gets good enough, we're just gonna.
You're gonna fucking digitally.
Yeah. We're just gonna have an AI version of the Undertaker.
I love it.
All right, well, let's get out of here, and thank y'all for watching another great episode of 6 Feet Under with Mark Calloway
And Matt Lyda.
and my feet.